MIT just proved that 95% of companies waste millions on AI failures. While everyone else is out there building tools that nobody wants, I'm going to show you what really generates long-term wealth in this field. And the opportunity has been hidden in plain sight all this time, you just didn't know about it. So what did the MIT report actually discover? Let's take a look. At a high level, 95% of AI projects fail. Companies wasted between $500K to $2 million on each project. But they didn't fail because of the technology. They failed because they didn't have a clear roadmap to actually get them where they wanted to go. It was bad implementation. And every failure could have actually been prevented if they just have had bothered getting a strategy before they implemented. If we dive a little bit further into what the report says, you see where the opportunity might start to strike you in the face. MIT found 3 mistakes companies always make. The first one, they build when they should buy. They waste millions on custom solutions. Now, this happens with everything. It's not just in AI. This has happened in cyber in the 12 years that I've been consulting, cloud migrations, all that kind of thing. They say, we have an IT team, let's just do this stuff ourselves. And while their teams are highly capable, they often shoot themselves down because there is so much red tape in a massive organization that they actually can't do what they need to do to get the job done. But then also they don't have that outsider's perspective because some of them are just hobbyists. They don't have that eagle eye, that expert opinion that an external person would actually have when they come in. So that's one of the reasons that these failed. The second reason was that they used the wrong tools because they saw a bunch of people in-house using ChatGPT, and obviously everybody knows what ChatGPT is now. They thought, hey, we could just slap this in here, or we can use an enterprise license and it will know exactly what it needs to do and how to do it. But realistically, in the bigger picture, an LLM is only as smart as the context that you give it and the information that it has to do the thing that it needs to do. So in the case of any business that wanted to have its own kind of RAG, if it wasn't built efficiently with proper data that the company actually uses with their workflows and things like that, this system is never going to actually know how to provide something useful. And if you think about it from the perspective of, let's just say HR, if this LLM that they used doesn't have all of the HR data, the processes, the mapping to employees, and how it needs to respond to those employees, it's never going to understand how to do its job properly. So you can see how easily this can lead to some form of failure. Then the third thing is that they focused on all the wrong problems. So they focused on the sexy things first, which for the most part is this sales and marketing. Now, obviously from a business perspective, sales and marketing is one, how you bring in all your customers, but then also how you as a business make money. So it does seem super important, but that doesn't mean that that's exactly how you should start automating your business, because often the problem with businesses isn't that they don't have this front delivery. It's more just that the back-end stuff is totally screwed, and that needs to be addressed before they actually move on to the sexier stuff like sales. So when we look at this from this perspective, we're talking about back-end automation, all the boring stuff that connects departments together. But even before we get into automation, you'll notice when you get into these larger companies that a lot of their processes themselves, even before automation, are completely unoptimized. And people don't fix that kind of shit first, and they dive straight into chucking an AI model onto something, and it just comes across as something that is completely useless because it's now working on broken processes and unoptimized processes. So the solution becomes working through those things step by step before you add AI automation. But in this case, they didn't do that. They just slapped AI onto everything and threw it into their sales and marketing, and then realized that they didn't actually get that much money back from it. The point being is that every company making these mistakes right now, they need someone to solve them because they clearly can't do it themselves. So the market reality is that every single business wants AI, but they don't know how. Most AI builders, they're just peddling tools that do a one-time fix and ultimately will lead to some form of breakage in the future because, again, these things aren't being constantly evolved. They weren't part of a strategic roadmap, and they were just sold as a piece of a puzzle that probably doesn't provide much value in many cases. These AI builders also don't understand the longer-term picture. You know, a lot of them are super young. They just figured out how AI works and they managed to make all these sales and money, and that's awesome. But again, the long-term picture is where everything needs to be focused on. So the real experts who understand the implementation, they're super rare. And that makes you really valuable because if you know how the tools work and you can understand the niche, whatever it is that you're in, and you can attach business strategy to that, that makes you way more valuable than just a tool builder or anyone who's just peddling some form of AI. And ultimately that leads us to this being the perfect time to enter the market. And you might be sitting there thinking, okay, but what am I going to enter the market as if not a tool builder? And the answer is pretty simple. It's been around for decades. It's consulting. But a lot of people think that consulting is the wrong thing. Your impression of that might be a dude who went to an Ivy League school, wears a blue suit, and smiles like he belongs in a toothpaste commercial. But realistically, that's just one path of consulting and one person's view of what those people actually do. The other whole picture is that there's something called boutique consulting, which is just a bunch of techies who once started a consultancy themselves and did the exact same thing as the big four, just with far less red tape and far more freedom. The point being is generally it's going to be a company that's between 2 and maybe up to like 100 or 150 people. And they're a lot more fluid, they're a lot more flexible. They understand technology just as much as the big four, if not even more, because again, they were once working in the field themselves. But before I dive into all the different types of consulting paths that you can take, which I've done in another video, let's just answer the question straight up. What is a consultant and how do I position myself as an AI consultant? So the first thing that you do is you just position yourself as an expert in your niche. And that's a very strong thing that you need to be able to do, because the majority of what you're doing as a consultant is positioning. You're manipulating someone's perception into believing that you are the best person to solve this specific problem. And that forms part psychology, part sales psychology, however you want to list it. But the point being is that it's extremely important because you need to wrap yourself in this bow. But then the second half of this is that you really do need to know your shit. You can't just go in there, talk a whole bunch of fluff and not actually deliver on anything, because the delivery part is super important. That's what clients pay you for now. They pay you for the outcome. They pay you for your business strategy and your knowledge, not just for the tech, but how you talk to people, how you can communicate really complex things to their entire team in a way that everybody understands, but then also implement the exact solution that they need based on your expertise. So you can see how these things kind of form into each other. And the way that it's different from building a simple tool is that a tool is just one piece of the puzzle. As a consultant, you would be focusing on the much larger picture over a much longer period of time. So for instance, it might be you starting off there, instead of going and saying, here, use this tool for your sales team. Now it's going to be, okay, I'm not going to sell you anything. First, I need to have a look at how your business operates. We need to look at the workflows. How does the team communicate? What processes do you have in place? Things like that. That's step one. Then step two, off of that report, you would then start to implement and transform things. And then after that, you might look at optimizing processes. You might look at optimizing the team. Can you train them? Can you teach them anything? You can see all the different angles that you go down as a consultant. It's no longer just one thing. It's many parts of a much bigger picture. And that brings us on to our second point of what do you actually charge? Now, obviously, for the most part, it's literally tied to the size of the business and the size of the problem that they have to solve. So if you go to an enterprise and they have a really big problem to solve, you're going to charge a ton of money because it's going to be a problem that takes a really long time to solve, but it's also super expensive. It's a massive pain point for them. And then if you go down on the other end of the scale, say you just go to like a small set of dentists, obviously they have a much smaller problem. They have lower budget and things like that. So even if the urgency there, if the people don't have the budget, you can't charge that much money. So your goal should be to find the biggest client that you possibly can with the biggest pain point and see what you can get out of them. Now, I have a whole video on all the different pricing models that you can use as a consultant. You'll see it in the description below. But for the most part, you're probably going to be focusing on value-based pricing when you're starting out in AI consulting, because that's literally what clients are asking for at this point. And value-based consulting is just taking sort of a fixed term contract, and then you as the consultant, you find some form of value metrics with ROI that the customer would get out of it, and then you would take 10 to 20% of whatever that ROI is. So for instance, if you found that there was something worth 900K to a business, you would charge 10K for that to solve this specific problem. And that's at a really high level. I do break it down in my pricing videos, so check that out. But for the most part, just keep in mind that as a tool builder, you have like 1 or 2 pricing models that you can play with. As a consultant, on the entire journey that you have, you can use 4 or 5 and make a ton more money than just being a tool builder. And then you're asking yourself, okay, but what kind of clients pay for this? And the answer is literally everyone at this point in time, because everybody is confused. And if at some point they didn't know that they were confused, certainly after this MIT report has already gone viral, more and more companies are going to start realizing it now. But as AI gets out there more and more, you're going to start seeing people like, oh, AI can do this now? Shit, we don't know how to do that. How do we do this? But we need to do it. And they have this guilt that's wrapped to that, which kind of fuels them and makes it more urgent and adds more pain, which again just increases your value. So if you're asking yourself who's paying, clearly at this point you probably aren't building with AI, because if you were, you would already understand that this kind of stuff is amazing, what we can do, especially if we can figure out a way to get it into the much larger enterprises. And at this point, you might be asking yourself, how the hell do I know this if AI consulting isn't even a buzzword yet that everyone's using? And that's simply because I've been in consulting for 12 years. So while the label changes, the methodology's been around for decades. I was a cyber consultant for 12 years. For the last year and a half, it's been AI consulting. I also had a cloud and DevOps consultancy that I ran on the side where I was reselling partners from South Africa to end clients in London. So I've worked in several different verticals, and the amount of clients I've had from enterprise all the way down to startups and things like that, it's been insane. And this kind of problem was rampant regardless of the tech. So even in cybersecurity, they had these exact same pain points where they would try and do things themselves, or they would try and solve a problem where it didn't need to be solved using their in-house team, things like that. And it led to the exact same problems that this MIT report found. And 12 years ago when I started, there was such a high demand for cybersecurity, and specifically some of the tech that I was working with, that I was able to break into this landscape just like people are now, without having a degree, without having experience, and without any of those things. So if you want to find out more about my story, again, it's all over my YouTube channel. But for now, we're going to focus on some ways that you can actually make money in AI consulting. So these don't have to be one-off things, right? You can put these all together if you wanted to. You could do them one by one. You could focus and specialize on only doing one of them. It all depends on how you want to position yourself, which is, again, the most amazing part of being a consultant, is that you have all of this freedom to do what you want to do. So the first thing that you can do is an AI audit. Audits have been around forever. Sometimes they're free lead magnets to get you into the actual implementation part, but most of the time you charge them. So it's pretty simple. This is what the MIT report released as one of the biggest problems, is that people didn't have a strategic roadmap. They just kind of said, okay, well, sales and marketing makes the most sense. Let's go and throw a bunch of money into that. But realistically, an AI audit is probably the most valuable thing you could do. Just like you audit anything, you understand, okay, over the next 90 days, we should be focusing on this because the objective data points us to that. And that's what you would do for an AI audit. You would go in there and you would find out their workflow processes, how do the teams communicate, all of the things that I mentioned earlier, and then you would go in there and you would charge them a fixed fee for that specific thing. In this case, you might even use value-based pricing, like what is that worth them? What ROI could you uncover by doing this sort of work? You can attach value-based to that. But normally it's going to be more fixed price for an audit, because you're not really giving them that much value just by giving them an audit. It's more the implementation where the value-based pricing gets attached. And that leads us into point 2, which is the implementation strategy. So let's say you charge $50K to plan and oversee the AI deployment. That would obviously be in a slightly bigger organization, but the point is that off of the audit that you build, you would then go and implement the stuff. So a lot of consultancies, they might just specialize in audits, and they'll say, these are all your problems, okay, bye, we're going now. But that's insane, because you just leave a whole bunch of money on the table by not actually implementing the thing that you want to do. So you can see how already we've charged 20K for an audit, and now we're going to do 50K for an AI implementation. And again, this will obviously vary depending on your region and the size of your client. But the point is that it's going to be super lucrative, especially when you put two of these things together. And you can see how it turns just one piece of money into two pieces over a longer period of time. And then another thing that you need to keep in mind when you're doing these audits and these implementations is, as soon as you get on site into a client, there is so much more value you can unlock when you're actually in there. It's not about upselling. It's about finding different problems that they weren't aware of before. And when you find these problems, it means that you have more webs that you can then extend yourself to and say, oh, hey, we can actually look at this team as well once we've successfully done this. You wouldn't go in there and do that immediately, obviously. You would wait until you've done a good job and you've shown them a bunch of value first and that you're actually capable. But the point is that you have this whole new avenue that you can explore once you've done a bit of work. So that then brings us on to step 3, is failure prevention. And again, based on this report, that was one of the biggest problems that they had, because they didn't focus on the AI audit first. They had no roadmaps. So not only would you use this as a selling point for your audit to prevent super expensive mistakes that on average cost businesses $500K, but you also bake that into the work that you're doing. So the AI audit prevents that, but then you also build your systems and the strategy behind that in a way that prevents failure or prevents security breaches. Because holy shit, there's going to be so much money in AI security. So anyone working in cyber and watching this, if you guys learn AI security and you get into organizations, all these tool builders who have fucked everything up because they didn't understand anything about security, you're going to have so much money on your hands. But the point being, now we have 3 ways of making money. Then we get on to point number 4, which is change adoption and workshops. And this is probably the biggest backbone of any project you'll ever do as a consultant, and something you really need to learn to understand. A lot of people think that just going in there and doing the tech is everything a consultant or someone really smart does, but it's really not. The biggest part is change management. It's the psychology behind people working together. Because if you look at it from this picture, people fear change because it goes after their identity, their competence, and their security. AI is going to steal my job. AI is going to replace me. AI could never replace me. And they push it away, and then they poison the well, and they do things like that. So this is really important for an organization, because when they see this kind of thing and they see all these people poisoning their own well, They think the best thing to do is to give them a generic training video that nobody gives a shit about and nobody would ever watch in a million years, but they try and force it on them and say, this is what we're doing now. And that's not the thing to do. So with change adoption and a workshop, you would go in there and you would probably start off by finding people who are really excited about it. They really like AI. They're pretty good with it. They tinker with it. They use it to help them get the job done. Those are the people that you want to ally with first, because they're going to sing your songs to the rest of the team and they'll probably be really helpful getting you through your engagement. But they have a lot of value, which we'll talk about later. The second camp is going to be the fearful people, and these are the people who are afraid of change, and they're the ones who are worried about their identity changing. The champions don't give a shit about anything. They're too busy being Labradors and excited about the product. And then you have the skeptics who have been in tech for a while, and they think, oh, this is just another fad. It's never going to work out. I don't want to get involved in this. This is just stupid. Point being, the champions help you get your job done. Your goal is to convert the fearful into champions, and you let the data and the metrics speak for themselves and the team's productivity increase, and then the skeptics will automatically hop on board because there's no point in arguing with the skeptic. The point being of that little rant is that because this is such an important part of the business and the success of whatever it is that you're doing, you guys really need to understand change psychology. AI can help you do that. I can help you do that. I've got videos on this, but make sure that you focus on it, because people will pay you a ton of money to come in there as an AI champion, get their team super excited and show them why it's not actually something to be afraid of or something to be skeptical about. And you can see here, so 30K is actually pretty standard for this type of thing. It's just a week's work. You can send in, once you've done it yourself, you can build a framework. And you could just find someone who's really charismatic and just a little bit technical to deliver it to them. Because again, this isn't really a technical skill, it's a people management skill. So again, that ties in with our whole picture. And then finally, you have ongoing support. So this is where you would have some kind of retainer model. And you would say something like, okay, AI is going to continuously evolve. So over the next 6 months, you can do a retainer model with us. You pay us $5,000 a month. You get our support for 2 days a week. We will cover any evolution of the systems. We can keep track of your APIs, make sure they're all still working. We can keep supporting your team to make sure that the change adoption that we gave you in the workshop is still carrying on and everybody is still getting on board and there's not massive problems with that. But again, you can see now we have this complete picture. We've gone from audit to implementation, failure prevention, change adoption and workshops to ongoing support. And each one of these can have a different kind of pricing model, one of which ends with you getting guaranteed income for X amount of time, which you can offer to multiple clients at the same time, which means you have predictable income, which is the holy grail of anything. So you can see why this big picture is so important. You're no longer just a tool builder building something that ultimately is going to die. You are this consultant who offers all of this stuff and gets paid a ton more money because you're an expert in doing all of this. So hopefully that cleared it up a little bit about what you can actually do. And this is just the beginning. It's also at a high level. I have videos going into all of this stuff. If you check out my YouTube channel, I talk about all of it in depth. Then next up, I'm pretty sure you want some form of your own 90-day plan. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put something at a high level. It will have time markers, but realistically, if you're more of a cowboy and you don't mind a bit of risk, you don't have to stick to these specific month 1, month 2, whatever. You can go at your own pace and do what you want to do. And again, follow along with some of my videos because they'll definitely get you there a lot faster. But I'm going to base some of this off of the things that I did when I started out 12 years ago and some of the things that I wish I would have done, because there are a lot of shortcuts that you can actually take to get into this whole consulting thing before you actually have all of the experience, especially in tech, which segues us in nicely to month 1, where you actually need to focus on getting experience any way that you can. And you want to choose one of these paths. Now, the first path that you can take is that you can actually work for an AI consultancy that's already out there. So if you're already dabbling with tools and you know your way around them a little bit, you can approach a consultancy and you can say, hey, I'm doing XYZ right now. My focus is on this. Here's my resume, blah, blah, blah. And they will actually hire you as a junior consultant for whatever the salary might be. But the point is that you're going to use them to build a portfolio for yourself. So while you're out doing projects for them, you're building case studies for yourself of companies that you've done things for, stuff like that. And this is going to be your safest route. Now, a personal example from me, when I started 12 years ago, I was an immigrant from South Africa. I moved to London at 22. I had no degree, no experience. And at the time, I was producing trance music and DJing, which was awesome. But I hated being poor and I hated a whole bunch of other things that come along with that. So I thought, okay, I really need to get into something that makes a ton of money. So started with IT support, took whatever jobs I could get, ultimately met a bunch of people, got into consulting at the exact right time, which is very similar to this time now where AI is booming. Cybersecurity and specifically Splunk at the time I got into it was really booming in Europe, and there was hardly any supply for the massive demand that was in place. So it was really me taking a massive risk, going to speak to a bunch of people, telling them I can do this thing, even though I had no idea what the fuck I was doing, got trained up through them. And then I built my client list while working for them and paying back my dues and all of that stuff. Point being, it was the safest way for me to do that because I was able to learn through them. So this path can be really lucrative for you, especially if you have a little bit of experience right now. Option B is internal consulting. Now that might sound a bit weird, but basically if you're already working for a company, which I imagine you are, you can look at some of the processes that they have right now that are unoptimized or broken or you think could be better, and then you can slap some AI on that and make a workflow that automates all of it for them. And that is your own internal case study. And this is something that I did 14 years ago before I got into consulting and I was working in IT support. Obviously, AI automation wasn't around then. But one of my tasks every day was to rebuild all of these client machines that were coming in because they break Windows. And I had to do it manually. So I positioned myself as someone who was able to build an entire deployment server, which back then there were far less tutorials. But two, I put all of the return based on how much time and money this company would save because we did so many of these builds. And I said, okay, if I do this, will you promote me and then pay me X, Y, Z? And it was like, yes. So if you're in a position right now where you're underpaid and you want to kind of fill that gap before you take the risk into full-on AI consulting, find out what you can automate in your own business right now. It'll position you as a leader in that space, which means more people will come to you. You'll get more case studies. And I can guarantee you that there is stuff in your business right now that actually needs that automation. But it also positions you as an expert in that field. For instance, say you're working somewhere unique in IT right now, like back end of a healthcare company or something like that. If you understand healthcare processes, especially from a technological perspective, that means that when you ultimately do go AI consulting, you'll be able to niche down into that healthcare world because you've already been working in it. So then you become this specialized AI consultant in the specialized niche, which is even more money. You get the point I'm trying to make here. But this is a really good place to start. And I imagine everyone working anywhere will have this type of problem. No matter how small the office is, it's all about your positioning. You can sell anything that you put your mind to as long as you can back it up with actual results. Then we get on to option C, which is small freelance projects. Now, I'm sure you've heard tons of people are doing this already if you aren't already doing it, where you essentially create an Upwork page for yourself and you go out freelancing and you solve a specific task or a specific project for a company. It's so saturated right now. Everyone is doing it, which is one of the things that originally made me skeptical about this whole path because it can become commoditized and it does become a race to the bottom. A lot of people are also automating their actual outreach, so you have that to compete with if they are far better automators than you at this stage. But you can still do it. I'm not saying it can't be done. Definitely a path, especially if you know how to position yourself well. If you can manipulate other people's perception better than others can, e.g. making yourself look like the best product on the market, then go for it. But you need to understand that this is going to be the highest risk path. But the benefit is that you get more money and you have a lot more control. And from a personal example perspective, obviously I didn't do freelancing. I went straight into consulting, but my journey was IT support, then perm consulting for a boutique consultancy. So there were about 80 at the time when I joined them. They trained me. I consulted for them permanently. So I still got my paycheck month to month, all of that stuff, holidays, all the fun stuff that keeps you safe and warm. But then once I had my clients and all of that stuff and I paid them back a ton of money that they made on me, I went out and branched out for myself, which is essentially freelancing. In the UK, it's called contract consulting, but it's essentially something like a 6-month contract. You go out there and you do a bunch of stuff for a company. But the point being is that once I did that, I'd built partnership with a whole bunch of other companies. So they were able to then resell me as part of their infrastructure. And you can see how this becomes useful because you then no longer are tied to you having to go out there and do lead gen. You have other companies coming to you saying, oh, hey, Mansell, can you come and do this for us? Can you come and do that for us? And you build this whole system of people who are finding work for you. And that's the importance of partnerships. I have a video on this too if you want to find out more about that. And I don't want to clutter this video with a whole bunch of personal examples that don't really serve the specificity of this video. So again, if you want to find out more about all the different paths you can take when you go on your consulting journey, just check out my channel. And we're here at the end of month 1, which again is all just about you getting experience. So hopefully one of these paths work for you to get experience. They're pretty straightforward, and if I was starting out again, I would definitely choose path A if I had no experience because it's the best way to actually get that experience. But if I was already comfortable building tools and stuff like that, I might just jump straight into option C because I want more money. And I probably wouldn't position myself as a freelancer in this case. I would go full-on consultant. I would build my brand, my company, my website. That stuff takes like 2 days and you have far more value perception behind your image. So just keep that in mind when you're doing this. Even if you are freelancing for a lower rate when you start out, you can still get a higher rate than the rest of the people by positioning yourself as a premium freelancer. But that brings us on to month 2, where we're going to focus on building credibility. Now, those projects that you're working on, whether you're freelancing or in-house, whatever option you chose from the previous step, you want to make sure that you're creating case studies from that. And the case studies are literally going to be like YouTube content or LinkedIn content, something where you can put them publicly and people can see this thing that you're doing in public, because it builds the impression that you're an expert in this space. You want to write articles about it, all the AI implementations that you're doing. Maybe you're even doing something as simple as like AI for everyone, like tools that people can use every day in their work life, as long as you're showing that you are credible within this niche. And then the third thing that you want to do is you want to focus on joining specific communities. Now, I'm not just saying this because I have an awesome community that focuses on consulting, but because some of the communities that I'm a part of, where it was more of the tech side of building an AI, there is so much value in there. You meet people that you can network with. You meet people in your local area that you can actually become friends with. You can find business partners. You can find contracts in there. There are so many valuable things to find when you join a community, and it cuts out all the noise. Like YouTube is amazing for finding free content, but if you want something that's hyper specific to exactly what you want to do, joining a community is the fastest way to actually get there. So if you haven't found any yet, I recommend that you check some out, find one that works for you, and then just join it and, make friends in your area. And it helps you build your professional network, because that's what everything comes down to in the end in this game. It's going to be who you know and how they can open doors for you. And that brings us on to our next point of networking with potential clients. Now, I know a lot of people really hate networking. They hate the small talk and they hate all the other crap, but that's not what it's about anymore. If you think about it from this perspective, you can meet people anywhere. Every company is using AI or wants to use AI, which means these people are everywhere. So if you go to an event that you actually like, let's just say you like paddleball or whatever the hell it's called, pickleball. It's called pickleball. Let's go with that. Let's say that you actually like that. You go to a pickleball meetup. You're going to meet a bunch of people there. I guarantee you their businesses need AI. So you get talking naturally about something you both enjoy already, which is pickleball, which breaks down that antitrust barrier. So they automatically like you more because you both like the same thing. There's no small talk because you both like pickleball. You can talk about each other playing pickleball, which naturally leads to more open conversations about other things. And slowly but surely, you unravel all these layers about who you work with, where you work, what you do. And then you're like, hey, I can help you with that. So you can see it's far more organic than going to some dry old networking event. And I was doing this kind of stuff long before AI came along. I was already doing it in cybersecurity because it's what my mentor always told me to do. He said, hey, just go out and do the stuff that you enjoy. And it's true, because people in tech are everywhere, especially table tennis. So if you're wondering where to start, maybe start in table tennis. Point being, networking has changed, and you really need to focus on building that as fast as possible, because this is a thing that opens the doors to get you these high-paying contracts. And then finally, all of these things that you're doing with building credibility, they're going to help you position yourself as this implementation expert, which is the consultant. And that's where we want to get to. And you get there by building up this reputation through doing these things. Then finally, in month 3 or far sooner, if you want to take a bunch of risk, you launch your own practice. Now, in the UK, that would be an LTD. In the US, that's an LLC S Corp, far more efficient for tax perspective. But you're going to develop your own system. So you're going to take all of the stuff that we've spoken about in this video, and you're going to turn it into a pretty little package that any client would want to buy, because you've broken it down step by step. You've addressed their pain points, and your marketing is spot on. So you've now positioned yourself as this expert, and because in month 2 you spent the entire month building credibility, you can slap that all over your website or your LinkedIn, or your network will refer you as this expert. You see the point I'm getting at. And you just target companies that have these AI problems, which is pretty much everyone at this point. And your messaging changes from whatever it was before to I help this specific type of business with this super expensive problem using AI strategy, implementation, whatever it is that you're doing with AI. Simple little framework that you're going to broadcast everywhere, from LinkedIn to your resume, to your website, to every call or pitch that you have with a person. It all needs to link with one another. But the point being is that you are now this super expensive, valuable consultant that solves a specific problem for a specific group of people. And the best way to land your first consulting clients is always through your warm network. Even if you don't have one right now, go and build one in the way that I just told you to do it. If you can't leave your house, find a way to do it online in an MMO or something like that. I guarantee you can find people anywhere. I once met someone on LinkedIn because we both listened to the same kind of trance music. And I sent him a set from years ago that he couldn't find. And we started vibing that way and eventually got speaking, and it ultimately led to work. So realistically, you can find work anywhere if you just find a specific angle. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying you're going to wake up tomorrow and all of this is going to magically fall into place. I'm saying if you have a roadmap for yourself and you have a plan for yourself, using this as a high-level framework along with all the other free stuff that's available on my channel, you can easily get it done. But the bottom line is that there's a massive gap between what companies want and what they're actually doing at the moment that you can solve if you take this path into consulting as opposed to just building tools. And that gap is your opportunity. That is how you will generate your wealth. Like what I've done over the last 12 years, I never thought I'd be able to do because I had no degree or experience. But if I was able to do that then, now where I am in New York City, I can get way more stuff done. One, because I have all of this experience, and B, AI is such a massive opportunity that I'm just capitalizing on with companies. So while everyone else is out there just building tools that come and go and fade and probably have massive security flaws, over a long period of time, you're going to be focusing on being an AI consultant because that is where your generational wealth is going to come from. And that's pretty much it for this video. If you have any comments, leave them below. I will get back to everyone who posts comment. You can ask whatever you want. I use YouTube as my free community. You can check out some of the videos on the screen right now. They offer different views into consulting and all the things that I've learned. If you want some tailored community advice, you can check out my school community where I teach people how to build consulting businesses every single day. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.